What's up guys, welcome to VoiceyHere. This is your host, Captain Zach, and today's subreddit is r/EntitledParents. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called Entitled Mom Wants Me to Rewrite Her Son's First Ever LARP Character Because She Thinks He Deserves Better. So let me give you a little backstory on how a pay-to-attend single-event LARP works. After we fill the spaces available, usually first come, first served through the payment of a deposit, the ref team comes together and starts working on characters. We get the players to fill in a survey for us about their character preferences, anything we need to avoid, any personality traits they'd like to have, gender, whether they have an in-game relationship, etc. Some people give us lots of detail, others are just happy to tell us what we should avoid. Now, usually, we are familiar with a lot of players participating, so we have an idea of what they play well, what they suit best, etc. Like, you don't shove an incredibly shy person into a big commanding leadership role unless they specifically request it. Down the line, the players then receive a good 6 to 8 character backstory, written by a member of the ref team. I can't tell you how awesome it is to have someone come up to you on release day and be like, "Holy crap dude, I love my character." Anyway, the LARP in question for this story was this really cool, really tense weekend event focused around a group of freedom fighters in an unspecified Civil War type scenario. As the group planned a big attack, they had to deal with drama within the group as well as a slowly intensifying assault from an unknown, unseen, supernatural enemy. To the ref team's surprise, one of the players who signed up was a freshman we shall call Entitled Moneybags undergrad, or EMU. This event took place in the second semester, so EMU had been in the College Role-Playing Society, where 90% of our players come from, for a semester. He had never shown any interest in the LARP events run by the society, but he had been fairly active in the tabletop side of things. Anyway, EMU signs up in person, as most of the refs attended society meetings, and we were like, okay, cool, someone new. He didn't put much on his character survey, like barely anything if we're being honest, and his own specific request was that he have a role where he had a lot to do. As I was the only writer who even vaguely knew him, he played in one of the tabletop campaigns I was running for the society. I was assigned EMU as one of my characters to write. In short, EMU's character was the radio operator. It was a decently important role, and the radio started off as broken at the start of the event, meaning he would have to spend some time fixing it. I also knew from my tabletop game, and from speaking to the DMs of the other games he was in, that he had a tendency to be immature and mess around a little bit. And besides, this was his first LARP ever by his own account, so we didn't want to thrust him into anything too major. So in the end, I make this really cool character. He's a little cocky, a bit of a joker, but he respects the chain of command. I figured this would allow him to play the slightly immature character he seemed to prefer playing in tabletop games without it ruining the experience of others. Besides, everything we were using as inspiration, Alien, Predator, Assault on Precinct 13, etc., had that jokey, cocky character. It was fitting for the genre of the game. So release day, about 2 months before the game, comes around and the players I had been assigned, 4 of the 16, love their characters. Even EMU seemed happy enough. But that night, I get home from my bartending job to find an email. "Dear Mr. OP, I am led to believe that you are the one to speak to about this acting event my son is involved in. I would like to know as to why my son has been relegated to some superfluous minor role when he asked for the lead. Please rectify this immediately or we shall be demanding a refund. Mrs. EMU's mother." In all my years of running games, I had never received anything like this. Sure, people had asked for minor tweaks to their character, usually because they felt they would struggle to tackle the role given to them or they just wanted some small details changed. OP, I just want to butt in here and ask why you didn't just give this boy the main role. I've read enough Entitled Parent stories to know that that is not what you did. Hi there, preemptive comment section resident. I'm not sure how you got in here, but let me address your question while I have you. There are 2 reasons why this story will not see EMU take on a starring role in the LARP. Firstly, the leader of the freedom fighters was being played by a plant, someone we had placed in the player party without the knowledge of the other players. Basically, a deep cover NPC. This was because they were going to be the first to die to the mysterious entity that attacks the freedom fighters, just to add a little more chaos. Secondly, Emu was a complete unknown. No one had seen him LARP, and by his own admission, he had never done this before. We tended to reserve leadership roles to known LARPers, just so the role wouldn't be undermined. It sucks, I know, but we have to consider the enjoyment level of 16 players, and most of the time, try to avoid a veteran player usurping the leadership tropes from an inexperienced player. Anywho, I reached out to Emu and asked if we could meet up for coffee that weekend to talk this over. He says okay, and a few days later, I meet him on campus. However, the dude shows up with his freaking mom. Turns out, she's visiting for the weekend and is at this meeting to make sure I don't bully her kid or whatever. Hi Emu, so I'll get right to it. I just wanted to sit down with you and see what we can do to make your character better for you. I was sorry to hear that you didn't enjoy what I had written for you. No, it's just, I don't know, it seemed a little boring. My son is such a talented actor, he deserves the lead. Me just straight up ignoring the mom. What was boring about it? I don't know, I just don't want to be sat by a radio all game while everyone else does cool stuff. I'm completely understanding where he's coming from because I felt that way in my first LARPs as a player. Well, honestly, that's just who you are at the start of the game. Remember, this thing runs Friday to Sunday, and it isn't just gonna stick to the pitch we gave you. And besides, radio operator is going to be a really vital role in the scenario of the game. I get how you feel. I haven't loved some of the characters I've been given, but the thing you have to do is just play the role. Get involved. You're only going to be sat by a radio all game if you choose to sit by a radio all game. Don't worry, there are going to be things for you to do in that role, and you will 100% be able to interact with the main story and all that. Oh, okay. I guess I was being a little short-sighted. Don't apologize to this bully baby. You, to me, will not just sweet-talk your way into keeping my son in that awful role. Mom, it's fine. No, I paid a lot of money for you to do this, and I will get my money's worth. I start to try and explain about we didn't want to overwhelm her son in his first ever LARP, how he didn't give us a lot to work with, and how, since everyone is paying the same, there is no inherent advantage to any one character. Of course, she cuts me off. I don't want to hear it! Make my son the star, or we shall be demanding a full refund. 1, I won't. 2, it's non-refundable, and your son knew that when he signed up. Then I'll sue! Mom, please. No, Emu, we're going. I'll see you in court, young man. I look forward to hearing from your lawyers. Emu's mom drags her son out of the coffee shop, screeching about how she's going to sue, yada yada yada. At the next meeting, Emu, or rather, reformed entitled Moneybags undergrad, after I took the time to explain why he wasn't just going to be made a lead character in his first ever LARP, apologized for his mom and said that she probably wasn't going to sue. Apparently, she just said that a lot because it got her free stuff now and then. I didn't get sued, and he went on to really enjoy the game. As I had said, the radio operator was a pretty vital role, and he even got to die a big hero's death as he sealed himself in a room with a traitor and some of the monsters that had been attacking the party. You know what? The kid, not a bad dude. At least he grew up a little bit. The mom, however, ugh. And honestly, this story got me really interested in LARPing now. As someone who's always really wanted to try D&D but hasn't really found anyone to play it with, this sounds just like live-action D&D, which is literally what LARPing is, I guess, live-action roleplay. Let us know in the comments below if you play D&D or LARPing, and if you do, what are the most recent campaigns you've been playing? And don't worry, you'll only be laughed at slightly, you nerds. I'm kidding. Of course, I just said I wanted to play D&D, so. This story's called, No, I Won't Land the Plane in a Field. Small backstory. My dad was a pilot for about 20 years before retiring 8 years ago due to poor health. But in that time, my dad had many different jobs in aviation, so he could build up his flight hours and get better pay. That, and my dad doesn't like to stay in one job for too long if they refuse to let him come home and spend time with my brother and I growing up. He would often be in other states or other countries for days, weeks at a time, so he had a lot of stories to tell. This is one of my favorites he told me, so I figured I should tell it here. Flying was his passion, but he had flown with a lot of entitled people through the years. Though I'm not gonna give the entitled man in this story a name, since obviously my dad couldn't tell me his real name. Also, I'm going to try my best to remember a few things. The story. This happened when I was little, about 5 or 6, and my dad had been out of our state for 2 weeks flying a lot of important and powerful business people around the US. He was a charter pilot, so he was used to flying small private planes. He was exhausted from his intense flight schedule, but he is an extremely hard worker, so he made sure to power through it in the 3rd and final week. The job he had on this particular day was to take a man, who will be called Jason, from one state to a neighboring one so Jason could go home. About a 4-hour flight that took him over the Rocky Mountains, but nothing too bad. To my dad, that was a very easy flight, so he was relieved that he could get some rest for the rest of the day. So, as usual, my dad got up at the crack of dawn and headed over to the airport so he could prepare the plane. He already put in the flight plan a day or so in advance, and all he had to do was have the plane pulled out of the hangar and clean it up so it would be ready when Jason showed up. He always did this because he wanted to make sure his passengers were always stocked on snacks and drinks so they could enjoy their flight with him. It was about a half an hour before they were scheduled to take off, and Jason finally arrived with his assistant. Let's call her Nina. My dad is normally a patient man, but due to him having only about 3 or 4 hours to sleep every night for almost 3 weeks, he was standing in a silent rage while keeping the best professional appearance on his face. Jason was a very large man and didn't help my dad grab their bags and sat in the plane. Nina was about to help my dad load their bags into the plane. He stopped her and said, "Nina, come on, let the help do the job. We need to discuss the meeting." My dad was very angry with Jason, and even though this was the first time he had met Jason, my dad already wanted to kick this butt beanie off his plane. But still, my dad kept silent and loaded up the plane on his own. With only a few minutes to spare, my dad was cleared for takeoff, and soon he was flying out of the airport, beginning the 4-hour flight. It had only been an hour or two in the flight, and the whole time my dad was doing his job in the front cockpit with the door closed. He didn't want to hear them past his headset, since Jason was loud and obnoxiously talking about how much money he was worth, or how amazing his family was thanks to his money. What prompted him to close the door was this conversation. "Congratulations on striking the deal with the company, sir." "Of course I struck the deal. If they didn't, they would be garbage and not worth the CEO's time or money." "Speaking of money, you said your son will be going to college soon, right? Did you go with your wife's idea of letting him apply for scholarships?"
"Hell no, my son is going to Harvard on my dime. I won't allow my son to be in debt like some middle-class common worker."
He really believed scholarships were the same as loans.
He has a family name, and anyone who cannot afford to go to an elite college like Harvard is better off being the help.
With Jason referring to the middle class as the help, the same name he called him when they were leaving, my dad despised this man. So he closed the door and continued to fly. Though his solitude was not long enough, as Jason opened the door to try to talk to my dad. So my dad kept his best poker face while staring straight at his console.
"Yes, sir." "Are we there yet? I need to use the bathroom."
"Not yet, sir. We still have about 2 hours to go. There is a bathroom on the back of the plane with the privacy door. You can use that."
Jason's face wrinkles in disgust.
"I'll use something that's just like a common porta potty? I won't. Can't this plane go any faster?"
"No, sir. I need to make sure we don't run out of fuel, and we will be crossing over the mountains shortly."
"This is ridiculous. Land this plane now. I know we are near another airport."
"I'm afraid I can't do that, sir."
"Then why the hell not? I told you to land."
Finally having enough of this man, Dad turns to look up into his eyes with pure anger. In truth, Dad could have tried to get permission to land from the closest tower. But he was not about to have someone like him have him risk his perfect flying record. So he hatches a sadistic plan in his head.
"With all due respect, sir, no one tells me when to land my plane. Ever. And the last city before the mountains, we passed already."
"Don't lie to me. Just land."
"Unless you plan on peeing in the bushes or out in an open field, I suggest you use the bathroom in the back."
"This is ridiculous. Just land."
"I won't land until we get there."
"So where am I supposed to use the bathroom?"
Dad, trying not to give an evil smile,
I guess you're gonna have to hold it. Now, sit down.
With that, he closed and locked his door, so Jason would have to leave him alone. Though before he did, he caught a glimpse of Nina, who looked frustrated and embarrassed. Dad figured she was used to him doing this before, and with someone throwing their power around, it wouldn't be long before he lost his own job. His phrase to me growing up was always,
"Keep your head down, do your job, and do it well. Lazy or entitled people always shoot themselves in the foot eventually. Shine above the rest."
2 hours finally passed, and as they landed at the airport, my dad began to carefully make his way towards the terminal. He had to go around a few of the taxiways to make it to the ramp, which is usually a slow process. Though in this case, my dad made sure to go nice and slow, just to spite Jason. Soon as they were approaching the ramp, Dad could feel the plane shake, and he opened his door to see what was happening. Nina was calling out to Jason, who had already managed to somehow finagle the hatch door to the plane open. Jason got out, and once he was on the pavement, he ran around the front of the plane in turbines and headed towards the terminal as fast as his massive body could carry him. As my dad tells me this story, he begins to laugh and he tells me,
Nina in the terminal reported him. Jason lost his job and got into major trouble with the FAA. But dang, in all my years of flying, I have never seen a fat boy run so fast.
Alright, I'm not entirely sure where the entitled parent part of this story comes into play, but regardless, this story's good, with a good ending where the entitled individual gets what's coming to him. The guy shot himself in the foot. Ooh. Also, don't run in front of jet engines. Yeah, people don't exaggerate when they say how strong those things are. They'll turn you into tomato puree. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.